There's nothing like your first Mac. Here's what people online are sharing. Dr. Rain says, everything is just so smooth and fast, I still can't get over it. Syncing stuff between my phone and this is just chef's kiss. Mr. Incredible 488 says, Apple Silicon basically cures low battery trauma. That's how they felt with their first Mac. How will you? Introducing the all-new MacBook Neo. An amazing Mac at a surprising price. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Hello and welcome to the program, UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about a Florida Bigfoot Roundup. That's correct, a Florida Bigfoot Roundup. Now, we're kind of continuing this series that we've been doing on the Bigfoot topic, going through the different states and using Bigfoot Field Research Organization as our source. An absolutely outstanding website. I'm telling you, I could just spend a whole day over here reading these things. They're so much fun. This first one comes to us from December 12th, 2022. State Florida, County, Hillsborough County. Location details, Cheeto Nature Preserve. There are tens of thousands of acres out there, less than 1/5 of a mile from my location. That has got to be something else. Nearest town, Lithia. Nearest road, Browning Road. And then it says, observed, there is without a doubt a Bigfoot in Cheeto Nature Preserve. It's extremely foggy out tonight. We are having the first real cold front coming into central Florida. My location is in Lithia, Florida, near Cheeto Park. Without a doubt, I heard a whooping noise and a loud, prolonged Bigfoot yell. It was made in 3 separate calls, each getting louder than the last one. The last call was very loud. The first call almost sounded like an owl hoot, but it got louder. I could tell it was coming from Cheeto Park. There's no way I could hear an owl call that far away. And the last 2 were dead on. Textbook Bigfoot calls, actually. It happened at 10:30 p.m. as the local temperature shifted. Then they say, I also noticed I have heard loud thuds when I'm putting the chickens up late at night. It sounds as if someone is throwing rocks. The area is covered in baseball-sized rocks, so it would be easy to find one. As far as other witnesses, it says it was only me who heard it. Everyone else was inside the house. Other stories? No, this is the first I know of. Time and conditions, night, heavy fog, and it's much colder than it has been all year. The environment they describe as extreme fog. A cold front is moving in, and it's our first real cold this season. Cheeto Nature Preserve has walking trails throughout and can be hard to venture everywhere because of the standing water. It's very swampy with heavy oak trees in areas and large patches of pine trees. It's very common to see boar, deer, and bunnies. It's a perfectly preserved habitat and very large. This just sounds like ideal Bigfoot country to me. Maybe it's getting a little bit colder. The food might be a little harder to find or something. These things do seem to have a penchant for chickens. I mean, lots of stories talking about these things. So who knows what it was doing there? But this does sound like a convincing encounter to me. Now it says, talks about the investigator Matthew Moneymaker. He gives his bona fides here. The guy's got a lot of experience with these things. Been on a lot of different Bigfoot programs, that sort of thing. A real hardcore researcher, and this is one that he, I guess, has looked into. Let's go ahead and take a look at another encounter here. This sighting is dated November 24th, 2013, so about 11 years old. State Florida, County, Hillsborough County. Location details, Cypress Creek Nature Preserve between Interstates 275 and 75 near the apex where they meet. The sighting was about a mile due west of Freedom High School. Nearest town, New Tampa. Nearest road, Interstate 75. Observed. First, I'll start with the fact that I have never put much stock into the Bigfoot phenomena. I have degrees in wildlife management and wildlife biology, and I have been working as a biologist for the last 17 years. I have never believed that something could exist that has never left any concrete evidence. Furthermore, nothing similar has ever been found in the fossil record that I know of, so that has led me to believe it was all false until this weekend, November 24th, 2013. I am an avid bird watcher and wildlife photographer. I take very long hikes in various wild areas around Tampa this time of year to photograph whatever I find. I was hiking at Cypress Creek Preserve, which is between Interstate 275 and 75 near the apex where they meet. I was walking on one of the rather wide trails when I came to a stop because I heard a noise. I had seen quite a few wild pigs that morning, and I thought I could photograph one crossing the trail in front of me. I was looking down at my camera, adjusting the ISO settings, when I saw something large move out of the corner of my eye to my left, approximately 200 feet away. As soon as I saw the movement, I looked directly at it, and it was already halfway across the trail at this point. My eyes were directly on the animal as it walked, upright, across the rest of the trail into the palmettos. It was very large, at least 6 feet tall or more, completely black in color, with a very wide chest from front to back. It was walking completely upright with a very fast, purposeful pace. The animal was leaning forward slightly, but did not seem awkward with his steps, like a bear would be while walking upright. I slowly walked over to the spot where I saw it cross, and I could still hear it moving through the woods in the distance. I immediately noticed that all the birds around me had stopped chirping, and the insects had stopped making noise as well. I looked for tracks or hair left on the plants in the area, but found nothing. I was able to get a picture of the palmetto on the trail where it crossed, and I put my tripod near it for a height comparison. I am extremely knowledgeable about the wildlife in Florida, but I cannot explain what type of animal I saw this past weekend. I also noticed the birds in the area stopped chirping at the time of the sighting. Says other witnesses, just me. I was adjusting camera settings just prior to the sighting. Other stories, no. Times and conditions, 9:04 a.m., overcast, around 64 degrees. Environment, upland pine hammock with wet cypress hammock nearby. Well, it just goes to show you how it just takes one incident for a non-believer to become a believer. It's a great sighting. This sighting is dated as the summer of 2000 in Florida, Alachua County. Location details, very swampy area. Nearest town, Gainesville, Florida. Nearest road, 441. Now they tell us I am submitting this true report for my cousin, who I am very close to and keep in touch with regularly. She lives outside of Gainesville, Florida in Ocala County. She has told me this amazing story several times before, and she is a very trustworthy person. I strongly felt that this amazing encounter of hers should be reported, and she agreed. As she told me, it was a very clear morning. My cousin was driving her and her younger son to town on a narrow stretch of road near Gainesville, Florida, early one morning around 7 a.m. She may have been taking her son to school, but I cannot remember. The narrow road she was on had swamps on both sides of it and looked messy. As she was driving along, all of a sudden a hairy, upright creature walked right up out of the swamp on one side of the road and continued walking out in front of her car, and then it just stopped. She immediately stopped the car just a few feet away from this thing, not wanting to hit it, and just stared in shock at what she and her son were seeing. The man-like creature had stopped in the middle of the road and was turned around looking directly at them, and they got a very good look at the whole body of the creature. The creature walked upright like a human with a gait and looked like a caveman, as she put it to me. The creature had hair all over its body except for around the eyes, nose, mouth, and face. The most astonishing feature she noticed, though, was that the creature was wearing some kind of animal skin for protection or something. She was in shock. This creature had to be intelligent to create and wear its own handmade animal skin. The creature showed no aggressive behavior. After a couple of minutes or so, it just casually walked back into the swamp on the other side of the road. The thing looked half human and half ape. The creature was about 7 to 8 feet tall as well. When she got home, she told her husband what had happened, and at first he didn't believe her. For further reference, I can give you my telephone number so you can contact her in Florida. I am a true mystery writer, and I just had to share this amazing story with you. I do know that these amazing creatures really do exist. And then it says under also noticed nothing. She was just amazed and shocked at the detail of the creature she was seeing, especially wearing the animal skin. She said he looked just like a caveman. Other witnesses too, her son has Down syndrome. Other stories, yes, read my stories about the famous Florida skunk ape, the state's version of the Sasquatch. My late grandmother had a close sighting in Kentucky back around 1996. I reported it as well to BFRO. Times and conditions, early morning around 7 a.m. while on her way to town, clear day. And then environment, early morning and a clear day. My cousin was driving her car on a small road with swampland on both sides of the road. The creature came up out of the swamp in full view of my cousin when she stopped her car to let the creature cross the road in front of her. The creature turned and looked directly at her, and the car went on. That's amazing. I've never heard of these things wearing animal skins before. That is strange. The follow-up investigation says, follow-up investigation report by BFR investigator Kathy Betts. I spoke to the submitter of this report, DS, and he put me in contact with his cousin, the witness, RC. RC was very matter-of-fact and explained the details of her encounter. Her story to me did not deviate from the story she related to her cousin. 10 years ago, while traveling by car through Paynes Prairie on Highway 441, RC saw a hair-covered bipedal figure cross the road in front of her car. The time of day was around 6 a.m. in the summer, and the sun high enough to provide good lighting. Her grandson was in the car with her, but he would have been too young to have remembered anything. This is a summary of the phone conversation and details added by RC. And it goes on here, it says, Highway 441 is a 4-lane highway that is bisected by a grassy median. RC first saw the creature as it crossed over the opposite lanes, heading towards her lane of travel. It stopped on the median, and this is when she started to slow her car down. When it got to the median, I really didn't know what to make of the thing, recalled RC. This is when I got close enough to see it, probably about 2 car lengths ahead of me. At this point, she became frightened. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was afraid that it was going to come after me or attack my car. I was really scared. But it didn't do anything like that. It kept its face looking away from me, and then it sort of stopped and glanced at me quickly before it got up to it. Then it walked into the road in front of me, crossed the road, and went down into a ditch or ravine. It must have hunkered down there because I tried looking for it but couldn't see it. RC stated that the foliage on the side of the road was not that thick or tall, so that's why she assumed that it was trying to hide. RC stated that the whole encounter only lasted for about 10 to 15 seconds and that there were no other cars in sight. She explained that the creature was covered with brown, scraggly, coarse hair. The hair on its head and forehead looked longer than the hair on its body, which she described as being scraggly, matted, dirty, and coarse. I'm not sure, but the hair might have been wet. When it ran, it moved quickly and held out its arms like a muscle man. It ran on 2 legs the whole time, but with a hunched-over posture. It looked like how a monkey would run if it was on 2 legs. According to RC, the figure was about 6 foot tall, or maybe taller. I had the impression that it wasn't old, but it was stocky, muscular, and very stout. When I asked her to compare the body build to a human, she replied, I have never seen a person that was this muscular. It was tall and very, very stout. RC could not recount its facial features. It only glanced at me quickly before it took off, but she did take note of its feet, which were barefooted. Its feet looked big and thick. All I could think of at the time was that its feet looked like Fred Flintstone's feet. What was so strange, admitted RC, was that it was wearing a crude-looking covering. It looked brownish tan, a lot like a burlap material that was very worn and frayed at the edges. It was sort of draped over the shoulders, or one shoulder, over its back, and it hung down to about its waist. RC could not be certain, but she thought that the creature's arm and head went through a hole in the material. The part that hung down looked unraveled, and the whole thing looked dingy and worn out. RC admitted to me that she was just not sure what she had seen. I thought I'd seen a caveman, she stated with a laugh, but I know that it wasn't a caveman or bear or human. I just didn't know what it was until I told my cousin, DS. After I talked to him about it, I said I think that might have been a skunk ape. I have always thought of the creature I saw as a monkey man or a human monkey. RC also admitted that the encounter, although over 10 years ago and lasting only 10 to 15 seconds, has been firmly imprinted in her memory. For a long time afterwards, related RC, I stopped driving down Highway 441. Seeing that thing really scared me. And then it says Paynes Prairie Reserve State Park was the first preserve established in Florida in 1971 and made up 21,000 pristine acres of flatlands. It mainly consists of freshwater marshes and wet prairies. The only major roads that bisect the prairies, I-75 and Highway 441, provide a fleeting vista into the vast array of this mainly inaccessible yet richly diversified habitat. Wow, that's really something. And then it has the all the different expeditions and stuff that this Kathy Betts, the investigator, has been on. I think they've got some great investigators over here that really are dedicated to finding the truth, and their reports are always well written. Just love this site. Let's take a look at another case here. We'll do this one and then two more. This says it happened 1985 in the summer, August actually, on a weekend down there in Broward County, Florida. Nearest town, Coral Springs. Nearest road, Wiles Road. If we go to the actual count, the observer says, back in 1985 or 86, my family relocated to Coral Springs from Miami before the Sawgrass Expressway was built. We lived so close to the glades that my friends and I used to ride our skateboards to the levee and watch the Everglades burn. At the time, some firebug had set quite a blaze. On some mornings, we'd wake to cars and yards covered in ash. Needless to say, a lot of wildlife began to migrate closer to our neighborhood, including deer, alligators, and whatever else. One night, we pitched a tent in my friend's backyard, approximately 50 yards from a canal that separated us from the apartment complex. Across from that was the beginning of the Everglades. The fires had been raging for weeks, and people in the area were reporting missing pets, some which were inside 6-foot privacy fences. That's pretty amazing. I just think about that. These guys live right next to the Everglades. It goes right up to where the swamp starts. This massive, watery prairie almost area, full of all kinds of wildlife. We used to run between houses to cut through to go home. And this particular night, before we called it quits, we played a bit of hide and seek. I remember hiding under a window box behind a bush and getting spotted by an unmarked police car. We really thought we were in trouble, but the police were looking for a person that had been peeping in windows. We assured the police we weren't the perps and went about our business and went to the tent. 3 kids in a tent don't sleep well, so we were having fun cracking jokes and noticed a sound coming from across the canal, approximately 100 yards away. Something was slamming the dumpster lids in the complex across the way and making low, deep sounds and grunts. These were tall dumpsters. You'd have to get a boost to lift the lid. We got real quiet trying to listen to and figure out what it could be. At first, we figured a cow got loose and possibly was bumping the dumpster, but it became evidence that wasn't so. One of the kids I was with turned on a flashlight and started making shadow puppets with his E.T. stuffed animal. Then the thing from across the canal took notice of us for the first time. The grunts were still audible, but with what I would say was a hint of curiosity. We got quiet and real concerned, putting 2 and 2 together. Could this be what the police were looking for? The steps grew closer and closer. I remember we tried to figure out what it was, if it was quadrupled or biped. When the steps finally stopped, the breathing grew louder, then splash. Whatever it was 50 yards from us and coming in our direction. We sprinted to the house, waking up my friend's family. They were woken by 3 screaming kids at 2 a.m., exclaiming something was out there. His dad grabbed a shotgun and turned on the floodlights. He went out to look around and found the tent was demolished and covered in water. I swear I could feel this thing right around the corner in the shadows looking at us. We did not let his father investigate further until morning and couldn't believe the tent had been moved from its position. I have no doubt that had we stayed in the tent that night, this story would be much different, if at all. I am 35 now and have never forgotten that night. Also noticed cows don't swim and alligators don't jump chain link fences. Yes, 2 others, not including parents, were witnesses. Other stories, there were people talking about the missing pets. I just found this site and read the Wiles Road incident and thought you should know it wasn't the only time. It was very late, 2 a.m., and then this is an environment close to swamp, very dry conditions. So here they are in this drought situation, possibly driving these things into populated areas where they can feed at. Now it says follow-up investigation by BFR reporter Dave Wright. This witness was interviewed on the afternoon of April 19th, 2007. In my opinion, he is entirely credible. According to the witness, the police had received reports for several days about a strange prowler seen running between houses and through properties in the darkness and possibly looking into windows. He said there were also numerous reports of pets disappearing overnight from fenced yards. He described the deep, agitated grunting sounds occurring as something was going through the tall, heavy-lidded dumpsters across a canal from where they were camped. As the apparent source of these sounds began to approach their spot, the witness recalls a specific discussion about the footfalls, whether they were from a four-legged animal or a two-legged animal. They eventually surmised that it must be two-legged. He described the steps as distinct and heavy. They were just beginning to speculate that it might be a prowler the police were looking for when they heard the loud splash, which seemed to be something large begin to cross the canal 50 yards away. Their tent was a short distance from their friend's yard. Less than a minute passed between them fleeing to the house from the tent and his friend's dad's coming out hurriedly through the sliding glass door to turn on the backyard light. Soon thereafter, the father came out with his shotgun and found the tent leveled and covered with mud and water. The boys felt the animal was still nearby. They did not want him to investigate further that night. The next morning, they saw that the tent had been completely lifted off the ground, with the stakes pulled out of the ground. Some of the contents were strewn about as if the tent was turned over and shaken out. Wow, they might have been looking for lunch. It's got a picture here of where this happened at from Google. Very, very cool sighting. Okay, we'll look at two more here.
If you thought HBO's Euphoria was intense in high school, saddle up. Season 3 of Euphoria picks up 5 years later, and life looks very different.
Hello, Rue. You owe me money.
No matter what they're chasing, money, love, or redemption, no one can escape their fate.
The problem is, if you make a deal with the devil, there's no turning back.
Don't miss the 3rd season of Euphoria, starring 2-time Emmy winner Zendaya. Now streaming on HBO and HBO Max, with new episodes every Sunday.
Hey, John Stamos and Cologuard here. So look, you're 45 or older and at average risk. You know what? That probably means it's time for colon cancer screening. Look, it doesn't start at 55 or 50 or even 46. If you're 45, you've got to prioritize getting screened, because if it's found early, it's highly treatable. So get going. See if Cologuard is the right test for you.
Now, this sighting is dated November 21st and 25th, 2009. It says State, Florida, County, Escambia County. Location details: take US 29 north from Cantonment, Florida, approximately 15 miles. Take first right upon seeing the town of Bogia, sign that's pronounced Bo-G, but there really is no town there any longer. Go to end of road where campsite and boat ramps are. Hike north along the river following 2 track that becomes a game trail. Pretty detailed directions there. Nearest town, Century, Florida. Nearest road, US Highway 29. The Observer says on Saturday, November 21st, 2009, I went squirrel hunting in the Escambian River Management Area in Escambia County, Florida. I began to walk into the woods at approximately 6 a.m. The area I chose to hunt is a section of woods bordering the river. As I was walking, I heard a low guttural vocalization that sounded almost like a Native American dialect, only in a much lower range than most people would speak in. It reminded me of the samurai chatter that I have heard on your website and others. I heard the sounds for about 10 to 15 seconds and then once again a minute later. On Wednesday, November 25th, 2009, my oldest daughter and I returned to the area to hunt squirrel. We hiked back into the woods for about a mile and found a log to sit on amidst several promising-looking trees with squirrel nests. On the way into the area, we walked a game trail and smelled that wet deer smell that you often encounter around white-tailed deer. Almost immediately upon arriving, my daughter asked if I heard what she did. I asked her what it sounded like, and she said it sounded like someone walking through the woods. I told her I did hear it. I asked her if she thought it was a deer, wild hog, or some other animal. She said, "No, Daddy, it sounds like a man walking." I had noticed myself that the steps sounded bipedal. Upon leaving the area, I decided to take the opportunity to show her various signs of wildlife in the area. The game trail goes through the middle of a small meadow. The meadow contained tracks from deer, wild hog, turkey, armadillo, raccoon, etc. There are many fallen logs in the area from Hurricane Ivan a few years ago, and they have become prime location for grubs to inhabit. This is probably why so many different types of animals are making use of the meadow. One track in particular caught our attention. It was the barefoot print of what appeared to be a large man, toe prints included. My size 13 boot is 16 inches in length, and this print was approximately an inch longer than my boot. The print was made in a soft mound around an ant bed. I placed my boot print in the mound as closely as I could. The surrounding ground was too hard for tracks to show. My daughter immediately assumed that it was a Bigfoot track. there are stories of swamp boogers in this area, so it really did not surprise me. I took a photo with my cell phone, which as soon as I can figure out how to download to the computer, I will be glad to provide. I put a 3-inch shotgun shell in the print crossways to show the size. It was about 5 inches wide in the heel and closer to 7 to 8 inches broad just before the toes. Also notice, no, but I will continue to hunt this area and keep BFRO updated on any evidence I see or hear. Other witnesses, my 11-year-old daughter on the second incident, we were hunting for squirrel. Other stories, yes, several years ago, just to the south, a hunter reported being knocked out of his tree stand by a large hairy biped. Several years ago, to the north, a fisherman reported a large hairy biped wading toward his boat in the river swamps while he was fishing. Various accounts growing up in an area of swamp boogers, some of which were from my grandfather. Times and conditions: early morning on the first encounter with noise from across the river, and the second morning walking sounds. Mid-morning on the track finder, clear, cool fall morning with excellent visibility. Environment: river, swamp, very dense with undergrowth in areas off game trails. You would be hard-pressed to walk through the area without staying on the game trails. Well, sounds like a really swampy area. Now, the investigator says the witness added that he judged the creature to be about 60 yards away when it vocalized both times. The area has a history of sightings, has many water sources, lush vegetation, and plentiful wildlife. His report is very complete, and there was little else that he could add. He is going to continue to hunt in this area and agreed to keep us informed of any future incidents. Very, very cool report. We'll do one more here and finish this up. This last sighting is dated August 2017, State Florida County, Marion County. Location details: location was Hopkins Prairie in Ocala National Forest. Nearest town, Fort McCoy. Nearest road, FR 86. The experiencer tells us we were driving 2 Jeeps through the forest, driving along the inner perimeter road of Hopkins Prairie. We saw a structure in the distance and wanted to know what it was. We found what appeared to be a concrete boat ramp in the middle of the prairie. We didn't know the name of where we were until we started to leave. Looking across the prairie toward the campground, which we also didn't know was there, we saw this large creature about 100 to 150 yards away. We just stood there not saying a word at first. I remember saying to myself, look at those shoulders. It was moving around the edge of the campground, right where the grass for the prairie starts. I wear glasses and I had them on so I could see, but not as well as the others. I remember it was just kind of walking in a small area like it was trying to decide what it was going to do. And I remember its arms were long, just down by its side and swaying. I don't think it saw us. It turned and walked up into the campground and disappeared. We drove over to the campground, still not knowing it was a campground, to look around. The campground was closed, so we went around the fence. We went to where we saw it and noticed a footprint in the wet ground. We also noticed spots where it walked through the tall grass. My nephew tried to step out the paces. It appeared to step, but the stride was too wide for him. We didn't see anyone at the campground, and it appeared that no one had been to the campground. On the way into the prairie and before the sighting, we saw an abundance of wildlife, which I thought was odd. We saw turkey, deer, panther tracks, which we have a picture of, and on the way out after the sighting, we saw a black bear that we took a video of. All of these animals, except for the bear, we saw within a matter of minutes of each other. When we saw the creature, we just stood there. Didn't reach for cameras. I never even thought to take a picture, but we did take pictures of other animals. My sister-in-law said it was reddish brown in color. Well, that's interesting. It's almost like they were just stunned by this thing. Now, it's got a picture of these folks with their 2 Jeeps there. You can find that over at, I'll put the link to Ko-Fi to the BFR website. Also notice, found what appears to be a large footprint at location where we saw large creature, have picture of footprint. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what's here in front of this Jeep or what, but if it is, that's an unbelievably massive track. I mean, I don't know how big this thing was. Other witnesses, there were 4 witnesses, myself, my son, nephew, sister-in-law. Stories, other none. Time and conditions, it was afternoon. Environment, it was sunny day with white clouds in the sky. Visibility was excellent. You can tell there's a lot of tree cover there. Follow-up investigation report, investigator Matthew Moneymaker. I spoke with the witness, Matt, in the center. He's a credible witness. He and his family are willing to appear on camera for local media or documentary projects. The campground he mentions is the one noted on Google Maps when you search for Hopkins Prairie. It is in the southwest corner of the prairie. The campground is only open in winter months after big rain events and the prairie becomes a lake. There were 4 witnesses. The Bigfoot was 100 yards away. They observed it for roughly 30 seconds. The Florida Trail runs alongside the campground. There is a correlation between many sightings and major hiking trails like the Florida Trail, the Buckeye Trail, the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Coast Trail, especially where these trails are close to isolated lakes. Yeah, you can see it, really something. Plenty of water, plenty of timber around there. This spring-fed pond near the campground is the only clean water for miles around. This is where you should look for tracks if you decide to check out the area. Some great sightings out of Florida there. I'll put this link over there at Ko-Fi. As always, thanks to the folks that support the program over there. Thanks for the financial support. It really helps. There and Spotify both. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Until next time, this is UFO Warning, over and out.